If you thought the Visions of Four Heroes DLC in Dynasty Warriors Origins was just more content, let me stop you right there. There are details here that change the way you play, how you put together a build, and even how you understand these four heroes. And the curious thing is that many of these things aren't explained directly in the game, or they're hidden behind choices, conditions, and moments that go unnoticed on a first playthrough. So today, I'm going to show you 10 things they didn't tell you about Visions of Four Heroes, from interactions and perks that seem small but break the combat rhythm in your favor, to secrets that make the DLC feel bigger and smarter than it appears. I'm Mary, and let's get into the video. If you're sitting there thinking you need to beat the base game before touching the Visions of Four Heroes DLC, you can breathe a sigh of relief. The new scenario becomes available in your lodging/inn starting from Chapter 2. For me, this is the kind of shortcut that totally changes the game's pacing, because you can satisfy your curiosity early without getting stuck in that "I'll check it out later" mindset. The trick here is treating the inn as a gateway. That's where you access this separate content, almost like parallel campaigns you visit instead of just fitting them into the main story. And this format fits perfectly with the idea of dreams or visions, because the feeling is that you're stepping out of the game's normal flow and entering an alternate mode, much more focused on these what-if paths. What I like most about this tip is remembering that it's not just another mission. Each of these routes has its own hub in the inn and progression that doesn't depend on your base game progress in the same way. In practice, this means its own skill tree and a separate sense of evolution, so you can experiment with different builds and priorities without feeling like you're messing up your main campaign. Now, being totally honest, even though you can enter in Chapter 2, it makes sense to go when you're comfortable with the combat and how the game demands you read the battlefield, because the DLC arrives expecting you to play well. Still, just having this option for early access via the lodging makes it worth using as an escape to vary the game's flavor when the base campaign hits a slower patch. The mysterious companion Fei Wei isn't just another strong archer. He seems to exist precisely to break the expectation that everything will be stuck in the Three Kingdoms era. When a game does this, it gives that feeling that the universe is bigger than what the main campaign reveals. The coolest thing here is the mythological spice. Fei Wei comes from ancient Chinese texts like the Li Yetzi, so it's not just historical fan service, it's a lore choice. For those who like hunting for references, this becomes almost a mini mystery within the DLC. Why is this guy here? And that question alone is worth the trip. And since he's a legendary archer from outside the game's classic period, he works as a very interesting narrative contrast. It's as if the DLC opened a little window into folklore or myth amidst the dust and steel of battle. Personally, I love it when the game gets bold like this, because it doesn't need to replace the main story, it just adds layers. If you're the type who likes deep lore, the tip is to enter this part paying attention to the details and the tone. Fei Wei is there to make you feel like there's an entire tradition behind him, not just another unlockable character. And the gain is twofold. You test a different companion in gameplay, but you also get that taste of mythology infiltrating your Dynasty warriors. This bow mechanic is one of those things that totally changes how you face crowds in Visions of Four Heroes. Holding the guard button while attacking with the bow unlocks a continuous strafe where you fire bursts of arrows while moving laterally. And this turns into almost a perfect survival mode for when the screen is packed with enemies. The feeling is very different from the series' traditional melee combat, because you get into that dance of maintaining distance without losing damage uptime. What I think is smartest about this tip is understanding that the bow isn't just for sniping from afar. It becomes a space control tool when you master the strafe. Instead of standing still shooting and taking hits from all sides, you literally glide across the battlefield while pouring out arrows, creating that constant flow of damage plus repositioning. It's the kind of thing that looks simple on paper, but when you get the timing right, it basically becomes a different build.
Personally, I really like when a game hides mechanics like this behind inputs that aren't obvious, like holding guard plus attack, instead of just pressing separate buttons. Because then you feel like you discovered a secret of the combat system, even though technically it's all right there. And in the context of the giant hordes that Dynasty Warriors loves to throw in your face, having this infinite strafe option is almost unfair, it's so efficient. The golden rule here is, if you picked up the bow and felt it was weak or slow, you were probably using it wrong. Try holding that guard and see the difference, especially in missions where you're surrounded or need to kite more aggressive bosses. The bow stops being a support weapon and becomes a mobile DPS machine, and that completely changes the DLC experience for those who like playing more tactically. If you're messing around with the rope dart in the Visions of Four Heroes DLC for Dynasty Warriors Origins, this tip is the kind of thing that makes the weapon truly click. To me, it stops seeming weird or inconsistent at the start and becomes a weapon with its own identity when you understand that its rhythm is different. The secret here is to respect the hold on the strong attack. Hold it until it charges, because that's where the absurd range attacks and those spins that really clear space come from. If you let go early, it feels like the weapon delivers nothing, and the problem isn't the damage, it's that you're cutting the combo in half. I like this technical weapon feeling because it rewards discipline. You need to resist the temptation to press and release quickly, and in exchange, you get a full attack that's flashier and much more efficient. And when this lands in the middle of a horde, it gives that impression that you're controlling the battlefield with a weapon that pulls, spins, and clears a path. So the way I'd explain it to someone, treat the rope dart's strong attack like a commitment. Once you press it, hold it and let the entire animation play out. Test this for a few minutes and you'll feel the full potential appearing naturally, especially when you start hooking enemies on the edge and turning that into a spin to keep everyone away. One of the most different things in the Visions of Four Heroes DLC is when the game pulls you onto a board between missions and forces you to think, not just mash buttons in the middle of a horde. And I like this because it gives that feeling that you're commanding a real campaign, not just going from stage to stage on autopilot. In practice, your tip is perfect for selling the idea. Between one mission and another, you manage armies in platoons on the world map and make decisions that change how you enter the next confrontation. The rhythm becomes something else, because then every move has a cost, and you start planning 2 steps ahead, as if it were a mini strategy mode. The detail I enjoy most is the incentive for skirmishes. You enter them to farm tactical advantages, like unit action points, those free army attacks, and also secret tactics. When the game gives you tools like a lightning storm or an AoE buff, it gives you a real reason not to ignore these smaller battles. If you're dominating the skirmishes and arriving at the main missions with action points and secret tactics in your pocket, it feels like you didn't win through raw damage. You won because you read the map and prepared the terrain. The catch here is transforming a quick detail into a real advantage in the chaos of battle. This type of special moment is what I like most in DLCs. It seems small, but it changes how you play when you understand the timing. The idea with Zhuhei is simple and very smart. Instead of treating her just as a partner, you play around her gauge until it fills up. When that bar hits max, you can assume control for a short period, and that's when that feeling of "now is my chance" kicks in. These 30 seconds, which fly by, work best as a lightning swap. You tag in with her, resolve a critical situation, and get out before the game swallows you up again. I would use this to clear space in the middle of a mess, finish off a target that's escaping, or just reposition when everything turns into a wall of enemies. The trick is not to waste the control time. Go in already knowing what you want to do, because there's no time to think too much. And it's exactly because it's short that it feels strong. You start seeing Zhuhei as an emergency button that you carry, yourself, throughout the fight. If you grab the Visions of Four Heroes DLC and are thinking, okay, but where do I actually get strong? For me, the answer starts at the training ground. I like this kind of hub because it becomes that place to go back to the workshop, test things without pressure, and leave clearly more prepared for what comes next. The tip here is to treat the training ground as a smart grind arena, not empty repetition. Go in with a goal, test a weapon, adjust a skill, train a combo route, and leave when you've achieved it. When the game puts tougher bosses in this mode, I always view it as a personal checkpoint. If I can handle it here, I know I won't get run over on the real battlefield. And if the training ground is giving you exclusive DLC rewards, like perks only found there, new formations, more overpowered weapons, skills, and skill points, then it's no mystery. It pays to invest time there before insisting on the more chaotic missions. The most common mistake is ignoring the space and trying to compensate with brute force. Then everything takes longer, hurts more, and you're left with the feeling that the DLC is unbalanced. I see the training ground as that trick that separates those who just beat levels from those who build a character. You polish your kit, grab the exclusive advantages, and arrive at the end game with real options. And when the battle turns into a carnival of enemies on screen, that is exactly what weapons start to look game-breaking, but they were earned through practice. The new outfits for Jiluan in the Visions of Four Heroes DLC come with color variations linked to factions, like the yellow turbans and others. And this opens up an interesting loophole. You can literally dress according to the allies in the battle and create that camouflage effect. Now, I know that in Dynasty Warriors, we're used to wanting to stand out on screen, to be that shiny spot in the middle of the horde. But there is something curiously fun about doing the opposite, entering a battle dressed like the troops around you and feeling like you are infiltrated in the army itself. It doesn't change the game mechanics, sure, but it changes the vibe. And for those who enjoy roleplay or immersion, this is worth a lot. The thing about faction colors is that they give you a reason to collect and experiment beyond just, it looks nice. Each outfit carries a little bit of that visual identity from the DLC's alternative campaigns, so changing clothes becomes almost a ritual before entering a specific mission. And if you're recording or taking screenshots, these details make a difference. Your character doesn't look generic, they look like part of that conflict. So, honestly, if you're the type who ignores customization and goes straight to combat, try at least once entering a battle disguised with the allied faction color. It won't give you a buff or numerical advantage, but it has its own charm in blending in and then exploding in the middle of the crowd as if you had always been part of that army. It's a subtle touch the DLC offers that many people will let fly under the radar. In this DLC, some weapons you already know get extra battle arts, and there's also an increase in the trait limit. For me, this is that power creep that feels good when used well, because it feels like the game is giving you permission to break the meta with creativity. The most interesting part is that it's not just another ability glowing on the screen. When the trait cap goes up, the weapon stops being good enough and becomes a project. You start looking at traits as puzzle pieces, and then every drop or upgrade starts to have a real impact on your playstyle. And this is where things get dangerous, in the best way. Combine this new trait ceiling with the gems from the base game, and you can put together some pretty broken builds very quickly. I like this because it creates that moment of, okay, now I get what the game wants, when your character suddenly starts melting enemies and controlling the fight effortlessly. My practical recommendation is take a weapon you already master, equip the new battle arts first, and only then start adjusting traits and gems until you feel the combo tie together. If you try to swap everything at once, it's hard to notice what actually made you strong. But if you go step by step, you can reach a broken and consistent build without wasting time. Why not try reinventing the game? It just immediately puts you in the mood of the rebellion with an outfit inspired by the yellow turbans. And for those who like to get into character, it's a very direct way to start the DLC already with an identity. The cool detail is that this outfit isn't just nice clothes. It carries a strong visual reference to the rebels, so every scene and every battle gains a different seasoning, as if you were wearing a symbol. I always find it fun when visuals change the gameplay vibe, even without messing with attributes.